There's a kind of person the world isn't ready for. Not loud, not flashy, but dangerous in silence. He doesn't complain, doesn't beg, doesn't justify. He disappears and returns different, stronger, colder, clearer. People whisper about him because they don't understand how he survived what should have broken him. You might feel invisible right now, misunderstood, but what's coming is not a breakdown. It's the beginning of something terrifying, a mindset no one taught you, a transformation born from pain, isolation, and brutal self-awareness. Stay with me, because this isn't a story about success. It's a lesson in becoming unshakable. Watch this video till the end. If it hits something inside you, like, share, and subscribe, but only if you feel it earned your respect. Asterisk. You don't need an audience to fall apart. No one's watching when your alarm rings, and you lie there staring at the ceiling, asking yourself what the point of it all is. There's no applause, no music, no one to say, "You've got this." There's just you, and that heavy silence that wraps around your chest like a chain. This is where the war begins. Not when people doubt you, that comes later. First, you doubt yourself, and you do it in 100 tiny ways no one ever sees. You hesitate, you shrink, you delay, you talk yourself out of trying because the fear of failing feels safer than the possibility of being exposed. You bury the fire in you because the voice in your head keeps whispering that you're not enough, and after a while, it starts to sound like truth. That's the hardest part to admit, isn't it? That deep down, you don't know if you can do it. You don't know if you'll ever become who you say you want to be. You wake up every day with this weight pressing on your soul, this ache you can't explain to anyone because how do you describe a kind of pain that lives in silence? It's not a breakdown, it's not that obvious. It's a slow erosion of your will, a quiet, invisible battle happening behind your smile. And that's where most people quit. Right there in the middle of that mental fog, where it feels like every step forward costs too much. You start pretending. You wear confidence like a mask, but inside, you're shivering. Not from the cold, but from doubt, from exhaustion, from carrying the burden of a dream you're not sure belongs to you anymore. But listen to me, this is it. This is the place where everything changes. Because no one talks about how lonely it is to grow. No one tells you that becoming someone new means killing who you used to be, and that death doesn't happen quietly. It's violent, it's painful. It feels like you're losing yourself, when really, you're just shedding everything that no longer fits. You have to sit with yourself. Sit in the silence. Sit in the broken pieces. That's the real battlefield. It's not out there in the world. It's right here, in the mirror. Can you face the version of you that's afraid, that's ashamed, that wants to give up? Can you face that and not run? Because if you can hold your ground when everything inside you screams to retreat, then something changes. Not all at once, not with some grand breakthrough, but in small, stubborn moments of choosing not to surrender. That's where transformation begins. In the dark, in the doubt, in the deafening quiet where you decide, for reasons you can't even explain, to get up anyway. You don't need to believe in yourself completely yet. You just need to stop believing the lie that you're not worthy of trying. There will be time for triumph later. For now, just survive this moment. Just take one more breath, one more step. Just stay in the fight long enough to remember who you are. Because the world can't break you if you refuse to break yourself. First, this war, your war, it begins alone. But if you stay with it, it won't end that way. You think pain is the enemy, that sharp ache in your chest, that sting of failure, that overwhelming sense of not being enough. You've been told to avoid it, numb it, escape it. You've been taught that if you're hurting, something must be wrong. But what if I told you that pain is not what's holding you back? No, it's comfort. The quiet, sneaky kind. The kind that feels like safety, but slowly strangles you from the inside. It tells you to stay where it's warm, stay where it's easy, stay where you won't be judged, or challenged, or pushed. Comfort pretends to care, but it's not protecting you. It's preventing you. See, pain has always told you the truth. It doesn't sugarcoat things. It shows you exactly where you're broken, exactly what still needs to heal. And if you're willing to listen, really listen, it teaches you more about yourself than success ever will. But comfort whispers lies. It tells you you're fine where you are, that tomorrow is always an option, that you'll do it later. It keeps you just busy enough to not notice your hunger fading, your edge dulling, your purpose slipping. You don't grow in comfort, you rot there, and you know it. You've felt it, that unease in your gut when you've gone too long without doing something hard, that restlessness in your soul when you know you've been coasting. It's not that your life is falling apart, it's that you stopped building, you stopped fighting, you stopped risking, and you started making peace with things that were never meant to satisfy you. That's the real danger. It's not that you failed, it's that you stopped trying because it didn't hurt anymore. You learned how to cope, how to function, how to look like you're living while slowly backing away from everything that used to set your heart on fire. But pain doesn't let you hide. It breaks the surface. It burns. It demands you face the parts of yourself that comfort told you to ignore. That's why the strongest people you know didn't get that way by accident. They were forged in struggle, in loneliness, in loss. They were built in the fire, and so are you. You think you're behind because you're hurting. No, you're ahead because you're still willing to feel, still willing to bleed, still willing to walk into the places that scare you. Not because it's easy, but because you know that's where your power lives. So next time it hurts, let it sit with the pain. Let it speak. Let it strip away the comfort that's been slowly killing your spirit. Because on the other side of that pain isn't just strength, it's clarity, it's purpose. It's the version of you that refuses to settle. And that version doesn't just survive, they become unstoppable. There comes a moment when you just stop. Not because you don't care, but because you finally see things clearly, and what you see is costing you too much. You're exhausted, drained from holding on to people, habits, emotions that only take, and never give back. And still, you tried. You gave chances. You explained yourself over and over. You twisted yourself into something smaller just to keep the peace. You stayed in places that made you feel invisible, hoping something would change. But nothing changed, except you. Slowly, quietly, painfully, until the day came when you couldn't do it anymore. Not because you were weak, but because you were finally done bleeding for things that didn't bleed for you. That's where detachment begins. Not in bitterness, not in anger, but in clarity. In that brutal moment of self-respect when you say, no more. Not because you're heartless, but because your heart deserves to beat for something real. People get it twisted. They think letting go means giving up. They see silence as surrender, but you know the truth. Detachment isn't about turning cold. It's about reclaiming your power. It's about understanding that your energy is currency, and you can't keep bankrupting your soul for what refuses to grow. Let that sink in. You've been fighting so hard to prove your worth to people who don't even see your value. You've been showing up for things that don't meet you halfway. And deep down, you've known for a while, this isn't love. This isn't loyalty. This is survival wrapped in self-sacrifice. And you're not here to survive like that. You're here to live, fully, authentically, without begging for respect, for peace, for space to be yourself. So you detach. You stop explaining your silence. You stop chasing closure. You stop needing their approval to justify your pain. You walk away, not because you hate them, but because you finally love yourself enough to leave what's hurting you. That shift, it changes everything. Because once you learn to detach, you become untouchable. No one can manipulate you with guilt. No one can bait you with chaos. No one can keep you stuck in a loop of proving and pleasing and apologizing for simply existing. You don't react, you respond. You don't beg, you decide. And the people who once had control over your emotions, they lose their grip, not because they changed, but because you did. You stopped making their chaos your responsibility. You stopped letting their silence define your worth. You stopped confusing attachment with connection and started choosing peace over performance. That's the power of emotional discipline. You feel everything, but you're ruled by nothing. You love deeply, but you no longer drown. So no, detachment isn't weakness. It's wisdom. It's a scar turned into armor. It's what happens when you finally realize that your peace is not up for negotiation. There's a point where motivation just stops working. You know, the one when the hype fades, the energy dries up, and nothing about your dream feels exciting anymore. You're tired. You're distracted. You start wondering if maybe it wasn't meant to be after all. That's where most people stop, because they built everything on a feeling, and feelings don't last. They're loud, they're bright, but they burn out quick. You've felt it. That rush you get when you make the plan, write the goal, visualize the future. But then life hits. Days get long, progress feels slow, and suddenly, that fire, gone. So what now? This is where you need something deeper, something darker, something that doesn't care how you feel that day. And that something is obsession. See? Obsession isn't pretty. It's not flashy or inspiring. It's raw. It's ugly. It's waking up and doing the work when nothing inside you wants to move. It's pushing through the mental fog, the self-doubt, the loneliness because something inside you won't let you quit. Obsession doesn't ask for permission. It doesn't need applause. It doesn't care who's watching. You don't chase it. It consumes you. And yes, it's lonely. You'll lose people. Not everyone can understand that kind of intensity. You'll be called crazy, too much, too focused. But you won't care, not because you don't feel it, but because your mission outweighs their opinions. That's the shift. When the desire to become something greater becomes louder than the excuses. When your goals stop needing to feel good and just become part of who you are. Obsession isn't just doing the hard thing. It's becoming the kind of person who does the hard thing without needing to be convinced every time. You train, you study, you grind. Not for attention, but because the thought of staying the same keeps you up at night. You're not looking for motivation anymore. You're building a life that doesn't depend on it. That's what makes people unstoppable, because obsession doesn't waver. It doesn't care if the weather's bad, if you're heartbroken, if you failed yesterday. It wakes up, and it moves forward. It doesn't wait to feel ready. It moves because there is no other option. That's the kind of hunger the world respects. Not the loud, temporary passion that disappears when things get hard, but the quiet, unshakable obsession that endures, that refuses to be silenced, that shows up again and again until the world can't ignore it. So if you're tired of starting over, if you're done waiting to feel inspired, good. Let that hunger take over. Let it turn routine into ritual. Let it turn grind into identity. Because when motivation dies, and it will, obsession is what keeps you alive. You're spending too much energy explaining yourself to people who've already made up their minds. You want to be seen, heard, understood. You want them to get it to get you, but they don't. They look at you through their own fears, their own limitations, and no matter how loud you speak, it's like talking to a wall. And that hurts, doesn't it? Not because their opinion defines you, but because part of you still believes you need their approval to feel real. You don't. But it takes time to let that truth settle in your bones. It takes pain, isolation, rejection that cuts deeper than words. Eventually, though, you reach a point where you stop explaining. Not out of bitterness, but because you finally realize that their understanding is not your responsibility. You were never meant to be fully understood by people who've never been where you're going. They haven't seen what you've seen. They haven't survived what you've survived. So why should they understand your silence, your distance, your ambition, your scars? They see fragments. You live with the full picture. And here's the shift: when you stop begging to be understood, something wild happens. You get free. Free from the need to perform. Free from the urge to explain your every move. Free from the pressure to shrink yourself into something digestible. Let them misunderstand you. Let them create stories that make them feel more comfortable. Let them assume you're cold, or distant, or arrogant, because they don't know the war you're fighting. They don't know how many times you've had to rebuild yourself from nothing. They don't know how deeply you feel, how hard you love, how far you've come. Let them think what they need to think. You've got work to do. See, when you finally stop managing perceptions, you get your energy back. You become focused, sharp, dangerous, not in a violent way, but in a way that's untouchable. Because when you no longer seek validation from the outside, you start moving with a clarity that rattles people. And they won't like it. They'll call it ego, coldness, maybe even betrayal. But the truth is, they're not used to seeing someone who no longer needs to be understood in order to feel powerful. This silence you're stepping into, it's not emptiness. It's not defeat. It's discipline. It's maturity. It's the space where you finally become who you were meant to be, without the noise, without the audience, without the constant need to prove. So let them talk. Let them get it wrong. Because while they're busy misunderstanding you, you'll be busy becoming unshakable. You don't owe the world a broadcast. Not every step you take needs to be seen. Not every moment of growth needs to be posted, explained, or proven. And yet there's pressure. This constant noise that tells you if people don't see it, it doesn't matter. But you know better. Deep down, you know real power isn't loud. It's quiet. It's that slow grind behind closed doors. It's the sacrifices you make when no one's clapping. It's the nights you stay up building something no one asked for, because you don't need them to ask. You just know it has to be done. And that silence, it's not weakness, it's discipline. See, there's something sacred about doing the work without telling anyone. About growing in shadows, evolving in private. While the world scrolls past another highlight reel, you're down there in the dirt, planting roots. No spotlight, no fanfare, just you, and the grind, and the storm inside you that refuses to settle. At first, it'll feel like no one sees you, like your progress is invisible, like what you're doing doesn't count because it's not being validated. But that's a lie, and if you chase that validation, it'll distract you from what actually matters. Becoming undeniable. You don't get there by being seen early. You get there by becoming so solid that when you finally step out, no one can deny what you've built. That's the difference. The world celebrates noise. You're building presence. There's a kind of power that doesn't need to raise its voice. It walks into the room and changes the atmosphere. It doesn't explain itself. It doesn't seek approval. It doesn't overcompensate, because it knows exactly what it is. And that kind of power, it's built in darkness, where no one's watching, where it's just you versus every voice in your head that says you're not enough, where you bleed, and doubt, and almost give up, but don't, where you choose to keep showing up, without applause, without recognition, because you're not building for attention, you're building to last. That's what makes you dangerous. Because by the time they notice you, it's already too late. By the time they hear your name, you've already done the damage. By the time they ask where you came from, you've already outgrown the need to explain. You've been becoming, in silence, in solitude, in struggle, and now, your presence speaks for itself. So keep building, keep growing. Keep staying quiet when it's easier to show off. Because your power doesn't need noise, it needs time. And when it's ready, you won't need to announce a thing. You'll simply arrive, and everything will change. There's a moment when the noise around you gets deafening. People talking, winning, showing off what they've got. Talent everywhere. Flash, hype. You feel it, that pull to measure yourself against it, to compare, to question whether you're even in the same league. And that's where doubt creeps in. Because talent looks easy, it moves fast, it gets attention. And if you're not careful, you start thinking you've already lost before you've even begun. But what you don't see, what no one talks about, is that talent without direction burns out. It rises fast and crashes just as quick. Because talent is loud, focus is silent. And that silence, that's where the real work happens. The cold, lonely work that doesn't get applause. The kind of focus that makes you disappear for a while. Not because you're losing, but because you're building, training, honing, sharpening your edge while everyone else is showing theirs. That's the game most people miss. They think it's about being gifted, but it's not. It's about being locked in. It's about choosing to show up when no one's watching. About doing the reps when it's boring. About sitting with the pressure, the repetition, the doubt, and still doing the work anyway. There's nothing glamorous about cold focus. It doesn't beg to be seen. It doesn't crave praise. It's not driven by moods or motivation. It's brutal. It's disciplined. It's quiet. And that's exactly why it works. Because while talent waits for inspiration, focus creates results. And that's what separates the ones who talk from the ones who take over. You stop needing to feel excited. You stop getting distracted by what everyone else is doing. You stop caring who's ahead because your path is yours. You're not here to entertain anyone. You're here to evolve, to earn what can't be faked, to outlast what fades. So let them have their moment. Let them shine for now. Let them post, celebrate, show off. You're not chasing noise. You're building something solid, something real, something unstoppable. And the best part, when your moment comes, and it won't be because you got lucky. It'll be because you were the one who stayed locked in when the noise got loud. You didn't flinch. You didn't chase. You didn't fold. You focused. And in the end, that's what wins. Not the spark, not the hype, not the natural-born talent, but the man who stayed cold, clear, and committed when everyone else got distracted. You said, you keep wondering why it feels so heavy, why every step forward feels like dragging a weight behind you, why the progress never feels real, why, no matter how hard you push, something keeps pulling you back into who you used to be. And it's not the world holding you there, it's you. Because part of you still believes you owe loyalty to the version of yourself that helped you survive. The overthinker, the self-doubter, the one who stayed quiet to keep the peace, the one who shrunk to fit, who bent so others wouldn't break, who settled because chasing more felt selfish. But that version can't come with you. You're trying to build a future on the foundation of someone who was built for survival, not evolution. And the truth is, it's not working anymore. Because who you were and who you're becoming, they're not compatible. At some point, you have to make a choice. And it's not just about setting goals or changing habits. It's deeper than that. It's about releasing the identity you've worn like armor. The one that made you feel safe, but also kept you small. It's about grieving the person you had to be in order to become the one you were meant to be. And that grief, it's real. No one talks about that part. That hollow ache when you start saying no instead of always saying yes. When you speak up instead of staying silent. When you choose solitude instead of begging to belong. You'll feel guilty. You'll feel alone. You'll question everything. But that's the price of becoming. You can't evolve and cling to comfort at the same time. You can't rise and still protect the insecurities that once defined you. Growth demands sacrifice, Not of your soul, but of the stories you've outgrown. The narratives you've rehearsed to feel safe. The lies you believed just to make sense of your past. And here's the breakthrough. You're not that person anymore. You don't owe the old version of you anything. You don't have to keep defending your pain. You don't have to keep proving yourself to people who only ever saw you at your lowest. Let it go. Let the overthinker rest. Let the people-pleaser retire. Let the self-doubter finally be quiet. You've outgrown them. You're not abandoning yourself. You're choosing yourself. The real you. The one who doesn't settle. The one who doesn't flinch when the world doesn't understand. Because the life you're trying to build, it requires a different version of you. And it starts the moment you stop apologizing for who you're becoming. You keep waiting for that moment, the one where it all clicks, where you finally arrive, where it feels like you've made it, like the struggle was worth it. And now you can rest. But it doesn't come, and that's the truth no one wants to say out loud. There is no finish line, no big arrival, no final moment where life stands still and hands you a trophy for surviving that fantasy. It's a trap, because the ones who make it, the ones who really change, they aren't chasing some perfect ending. They're built to endure. You think you're behind because it's still hard, because the weight hasn't lifted, because you're still showing up without applause, without certainty, without clarity. But maybe that's not failure. Maybe that's the path. Maybe you were never supposed to arrive. Maybe you were meant to learn how to keep going, regardless, because this life, it will test you. It will break what's weak in you. It will force you to question your worth, your vision, your strength, again and again. And if you're looking for an escape, a point where the pain stops and the world suddenly makes sense, you'll miss the whole point. This is about endurance, not hype, not recognition, not milestones that impress anyone else. This is about building a life so rooted in purpose. You don't need the noise. You don't need the finish line. You don't need the world to validate your movement, because your movement doesn't stop. It doesn't depend on mood. It doesn't depend on being seen. It exists because you refuse to stand still. You become like the storm, grounded, quiet, relentless, not chaotic, not destructive, but constant, focused, moving forward with intention, even when no one's watching. The ones who last, they're not the loudest. They're not the most naturally gifted. They're the ones who accepted that becoming is never done. That peace isn't found in arriving. It's found in knowing who you are in the middle of the chaos, in the quiet, in the moments when no one's clapping. So stop looking for the end. Stop waiting for the world to slow down and tell you that you've earned your rest. Rest when you need to. Yes, breathe, reflect, but don't mistake comfort for completion. Don't confuse silence for the end of the story. You are not here to arrive. You are here to endure, to outlast the noise, to walk forward when the lights go out, to carry your truth like a fire that doesn't need wind to keep burning, because the relentless, they don't peak, they just keep going.